Good morning, QED coders. We are going live with the Janaga Book Club, the Historical Modeling Book Club. So, we will see if anybody is able to join us this morning. Jan is not going to be here, but perhaps we'll have a gentleman by the name of MP, love the initials, joined us last week. So hopefully he'll be back, and we'll have a few more insights about the book that we can talk about. In the meantime, while we are waiting to see if we've got some folks to join, I have been working on Janaga visualization in Janaga.net. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So, what I have here, if I do a quick, there it is. Do a quick share here. What we are seeing is .NET Interactive Notebook. So this is a plugin that you can install for Visual Studio Code. It's basically, if you're familiar with Jupyter notebooks, it's basically that concept. They've made it work not just with Python and other languages that are available within Jupyter notebooks, but also with some .NET languages. So here we have C#. You could also use F# in here. The idea is that you can add some markdown or code blocks to this. So I can come down here and say I want to do some markdown and explain what's happening up there. Right, and so people can read it, they can see the code, they can read the explanation. So kind of like that literate programming idea that Donald Knuth pioneered. So yeah, whereas Jupyter notebooks are primarily used, or were initially used, for research papers, .NET Interactive Notebooks, the main target that they're going for is education. So this is intended to help people to learn .NET, to learn the languages, but also to learn the libraries, to learn the concepts. So in that vein, I'm taking this concept, this tool, and I'm using it in order to teach Janaga.net and the concepts of historical modeling. So here we have a reference to a couple of DLLs. I'm bringing in unit test, and I'm bringing in Janaga.graphviz. That's an interesting looking one. Just add those namespaces, and now I can start declaring some types in here, and I can start writing code. So in this case, I am setting up a model. So this might be the model of the speaker and a conference organizer system that's in the book. So, in fact, it might be worthwhile to bring up that model from the book. So if I go over to a project called Immutable Architecture. This project is actually the Gatsby site that I created while writing the book. I mean, this is the book. So inside of source, we've got some, well, I've got the book. Here's the content. Here's the chapters. All right, and then here is, which chapter was it that I used that? I think that was when I was talking about, I think that's when I was talking about analysis. Let's see. Collaboration. That sounds about right. Yes, I trust this author. All right, so you can see I've got Markdown of the book, and then right here inside of that Markdown, I've got dot. I've got GraphViz. So I can do Control K V, open that up in preview. Oh, that's right. That's not the preview that I used for the book. I actually ran it through GraphViz, or through Gatsby in order to see it. But that's okay. I can do this. Select the language, GraphViz dot, paste that in, and now Control K V. There we go. There is the diagram from the book. And now we can talk about that. All right. Don't want you to expand. I want you to go away. Okay. So, when we are talking about collaboration among several different types of actors within a historical model, in the book I talk about using regions in order to bound the decisions that those actors make. So each historical fact is a decision made by some person or system. And in this case, all three of these actors are people. And one of them is the conference organizer. So they create a conference, they open a call for speakers. And then the speaker can create a speaker account, write up an abstract, and then submit a proposal to that call for speakers. And so you've got this collaboration among these different actors in the form of historical facts that capture their decisions. So, what I would like to do is let's start building this model in Janaga.net. And let's see if we can get from kind of this abstract view of what the world might be to something a bit more executable. All right, so I'm going to go back to my interactive notebook, and I've already put in Janaga.user. That's a starting point that that the Janaga key store understands for authentication. So I have authenticated this particular user. I know that they have that particular public key. That's what that means. And so let's start over here. So we've got a conference organizer, and they're going to create a conference. So the way that I would do this is I would have a fact type, and I'll call this Festify conference. So that's a record. And now in order to identify that conference, the way that I've got it diagrammed out here, I don't really have any predecessors. I don't have any fields in any of these facts. So it looks like a conference just kind of stands on its own. But that's not quite going to work with the authorization model. In order to authorize things related to this conference, I need to know its creator. So user creator. That's the creator of the conference. Now, if that were the only field, then a person would only be able to create one conference. So I'm going to also have string identifier. Okay, and so that defines a conference. Now, please forgive the fact that we're not seeing any syntax highlighting. It seems to be a problem with .NET Interactive Notebooks and records, is what I'm guessing. Which is unfortunate because I'm using records pretty heavily in Janaga.net. Now, what I want to do is visualize. Hey, GraphViz. We just saw GraphViz. I want to visualize the graph that I have so far. So I'm going to do renderer dot render types. So give me the type of conference. And now let's render that out. And so There we go. Now we have helpfully drawn this little diagram based on the types that I've declared inside of my Janaka.net application. So I can start reasoning through this. Now you can already see this is more detailed than this one. So here I didn't capture the fact that the conference has a creator, nor did I capture all of the namespacey stuff. In fact, in order to kind of organize facts according to their roles, to put them in regions, I might make that part of the namespace. So far the visualizer doesn't use that to draw boundaries. That would be kind of cool though. I could make it do that. Okay. So now a conference organizer needs to publish a call for speakers. So let's go ahead and capture that fact. Fact type Festify organizer. This is going to be a call for speakers. And so this call for speakers is for a specific conference. And if that were the only thing, then you could only open the call for speakers once. Right? There would just be one call for speakers for the conference. But you can imagine a workflow in which I open the call for speakers and then I have to do something. Maybe I close it down and say, oh, wait a minute, nope, not yet. Still have to work on things. Maybe I lose the venue and I have to reorganize things, and I'm not entirely sure that I'm actually going to be able to go forward. So close it, fix the problem, and then reopen the call for speakers. So in order to support those kinds of use cases, then I want to have a date time. So we'll call this opened date, or yeah, open date, that's fine. So that's the date time that it was opened, and now I can render that graph. So there we go. So far, looking pretty good. Let's transition over to the speaker side of things. Now on the speaker side, I've got the speaker themselves. So let's capture that. Fact type Festify speaker, because I put that in the speaker region. So the record is speaker, and the speaker is identified as a specific user. So here I'm making the decision. Oh, I want to go ahead and render that out as well. So type of speaker. There we go. So here I'm making the decision that a user can only be one speaker. So the speaker is the role that that user takes on. So when they log into this particular system, they say, I'm a speaker, that's what they are. They can't play the role of multiple speakers. So I could imagine a scenario in which you might want to be able to do that. So you have some different names, some different personas that you go by when you speak at different conferences. I don't know. But in this case, I'll make the decision. You get one. And that standing on its own right there captures that decision. So now a speaker writes an abstract. Okay, so we've got a fact type Festify speaker abstract. So this is written by a speaker And the abstract itself. So now this is interesting. You can see here I'm being very hand wavy, very vague, but now I have to be very deliberate about the choices that I make. What is an abstract? Well, here I could have the body of the abstract. But now if I ever want to go in and tweak that body of the abstract, I'm basically creating a brand new abstract, because here it is part of the identity of the abstract. So what I'm really doing here is I'm defining a talk. We'll just call it a talk. And now it's not the body of the abstract there. This is just the date that that talk was created. So now I've got that. A speaker has a talk, and then I want to capture the abstract of the talk. So specify speaker. So this is going to be talk abstract. I use that nomenclature when I'm saying this is a property of that entity. So just the way that I like to name my facts. Okay, so that talk. Here's the body, which is a string. And then, because this is the immutable property pattern, I have to have this little doodad. So now we know that an abstract replaces the prior versions of that same abstract, or the prior versions of abstracts of that same talk. And so that is the immutable property pattern showing up. So I can create a talk with an abstract, and then I can go back and change that abstract by capturing a new fact here, pointing back to the one that I am trying to replace, the previous one. If I have a talk that has multiple abstracts that don't have any other abstract pointing back to them, then I know that there's been some kind of a concurrent edit. And so that's how the immutable property pattern recognizes those concurrent edits. And then it allows you to resolve those by capturing a new abstract that has two priors. Yep. Okay. So we're starting to get there. Now let's go ahead and do the proposal. So when I publish a call for speakers, I say I want you to come speak at this conference. As it is here, you can take a look at the information that the speaker would have when they actually want to answer that call for speakers. What they have is they've got the date and time that the call for speakers was opened. And then by following up to this conference, they have the identifier of the conference, which might be meaningful to them. And then following this up to the creator, they've got the public key of the creator, which if they have a nice little white list of everybody that they've done business with, they might be able to say, oh, I recognize who that is, but usually not. So this is pretty opaque. They don't quite understand what this call for speakers is all about. What they really want to know is, what's the name of this conference? Where is it going to be? When is it going to be? And who is this conference creator that I'm dealing with here? Is this somebody that I know? Is this somebody that I am about to meet? So let's go ahead and capture some of that stuff. So we'll have the name of the conference. That's going to be a mutable property. So we're going to say Festify organizer conference name. And so this is going to be the name of a particular conference. And you're going to have a specific value, mutable property pattern, conference name, array, prior. Okay. Let's go ahead and add conference name there so we can diagram that out. So now we're starting to see, okay, that a conference has a mutable name, and then we've got this call for speakers. And so if somebody wants to get some information about this call for speakers, they can follow this reference up to the conference and then look for all the successor conference names. Find those that don't appear in a prior list, and they've got the current conference name. And that's what you display on the website. Okay, so imagine all that they've got that for the name, for the for the venue, for the dates, all that stuff. Those are all captured as mutable properties following the same thing. I'm not going to flesh it out because that's going to blow out the diagram. And then similarly, the creator, being a Janagi user, we can also have a mutable property coming off of the user that's that user's name. And then based on some authorization rules, we can authorize that name such that only a trusted source can define that name. That way you don't have anybody spoofing anybody else. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and submit a talk. So, I've got a talk. It has an abstract. And we know who the speaker is. There's only one speaker for the talk. We might want to have additional speakers. Or it could be that this is just the author of the talk and then the speaker is somebody else. I don't know. That all depends on what type of system you're trying to build. That's a conversation for you and your product owner. Here, I've made the decision. There's one speaker. So I want to submit this talk for that call to speakers. And so in this diagram, I did that as a proposal. That's a good name for it. So I've got a fact type, Festify speaker. The speaker does the proposing. This is all from the point of view of who makes the decision. So here's the proposal. I'm going to propose this talk for that call for speakers. And if I do it just like this, then you can only propose that talk once. You might want to be able to withdraw your proposal, submit a new one. So in order to support that, date time proposed date. Okay, so let's go ahead and add proposal to the picture. Okay, so there I've got my proposal. I'm proposing this talk for that call for speakers. Now, at the time that I submit my proposal, I have an abstract. But this abstract over here is for this talk, and it's not limited to just one proposal. I can keep updating this talk and propose it to other conferences. And so I'm going to make the decision in this application to capture the abstract at the time of proposal and say, that's the one that I'm proposing. And if things evolve in the future, that's okay. This is the one that I'm proposing. So you might make a different decision. You might say that when the organizer looks through the proposals, they see the most recent abstract, even if they've been edited after the proposal. Again, that's a conversation between you and your product owner. This kind of diagram can help you with that conversation. So let's go ahead and capture that decision that the proposal captures the abstract. So I'm going to say that this particular talk having this particular abstract. Okay. Abstract identifier. What did I do here? Let's see. Invalid token, comma. That's interesting. Let's go back. All right, we'll go forward. Oh, that's a keyword. All right. Or I can just do this. You know what? I made the decision. That's the word I want to use. I don't care if you've reserved it. Okay. So now we've got a proposal that is for a particular talk capturing a particular abstract. All right. So now you might be wondering, well, hey, if I'm capturing that abstract, don't I have the talk implicitly? Yes, you do. So it would be valid to just have the proposal refer to the abstract and not also to the talk. There might be other properties of the talk that you want to capture, and so then you would have to make the decision when you look for the talk, which of those properties do you go through. So it's my preference to go ahead and keep the reference to the entity, because that's the thing you're proposing, but then also have the capture predecessors. And so this is an example of the transaction pattern, where you're basically capturing, this is the state of the thing at the time that I'm proposing it. So the proposal is a transaction capturing a consistent set of properties. So in this particular usage, it doesn't look a lot like a transaction, but it's the same basic pattern. At any rate, we now have our proposal for the call for speakers. And we've got a pretty detailed model now. So yeah, there's more that we can do to flesh this out. So we still have venues, we still have dates, and then we can still continue down here, and we can accept or reject proposals. We can schedule rooms and times for these talks. And then, of course, there's the whole attendee experience. So all of that can be built out. But I think that gives you an idea of what Janaka.net is going to look like from the perspective of model building. So it's all about defining these immutable records and making these deliberate decisions about how you identify each one of those records and what makes them unique, and how they capture their relationships with other records, with other facts. So now I want to start exercising this model. I want to start putting things together. So instead of rendering out this graph, actually, in addition to, let's go ahead and keep that graph there. But now let's create some more code, because it's always useful to be able to refer back to that graph and see how things are related. Ooh, you know, it would be cool, now that I'm thinking about this, if, so you can see a whole lot of festify dot kind of blowing out the model. If I basically took each segment of the namespace and turned that into a region, that would have this strange thing about putting, maybe, yeah, let's think about that. It might be that when you see something like this, Festify Speaker Talk is a fact, so it can't also be a region, and that way you end up with just something called talk and something called talk.abstract, but it's in the region of Festify Speaker, and those regions can be nested, so the whole thing is in Festify, and then you've got Speaker and you've got Organizer. That might be helpful. Okay, we'll play with that. Anyway, so now let's go ahead and exercise this model. So as a conference organizer, I'm going to sign up to the system. So we will say, so we will do, yeah, it'll be Nicole equals, oh, actually need to create a an instance of Janaga. So Janaga dot unit, or Janaga test, Janaga, yeah, unit test dot Janaga test. So it's already in the using, so it should be there. So I'm going to say Janaga test dot create. And it should be, oh, it's not. So let's go ahead and using Janaga dot unit test. That helps. Now you can get to that. Okay. So there's my J, which is an instance of Janaga. And so now I can say I'm going to await, because you can do async stuff just right out here at the top level when you're inside of a notebook. That's pretty cool. J.fact new user, and I'm going to have some public key. Okay. All right. Why you don't like the equal? That's a strange little error. It's fine. Okay. So now let's go ahead and see what that is. So now Michael is just a user that has a public key field. That's that value. So that's all that does. When you just write an expression, it's going to dump out the value of that expression. That's just a .NET Interactive Notebook thing. So now I've signed in, so I'm authenticated. Now I want to create a conference, and that's what makes this, makes me a conference organizer. So my conference shall be called I'm going to call my conference factual. Yeah. So let's await j.fact new conference by this particular creator, Michael, and the identifier factual conf. Okay. All right, so I've got the creator, which is that user with the public key, and the identifier factual conf. Very cool. Now, if I want to actually see these facts kind of in relation to one another, I can use the renderer again. Renderer dot. I used render types before, now let's render facts. So I'm going to render facts factual conf. Cannot infer. Oh, that's right. This is going to be an array of, or an enumerable of things. Yeah, I should probably do an overload so that I could use just one. So there we are. We have a fact, Festify Organizer Conference, with this particular field, this particular value identifier equal to factual conf, and its creator is the Janaga user with this public key. So that's the information that I have, and I have already set up my conference. So now I want to define the conference name. So let's go ahead and do that. So the factual conf name 1 is equal to await j.fact new conference name. Is that what I called it? Yeah, conference name. For this conference factual conf. And we've got more to it. The value is factual conf 2022. And then we've got the prior conference names, which for this one is empty. I don't have anything prior. So new conference name length 0. Okay, so now I've got the name factual conf 2022. It's that particular conference by that user. Okay, so I've just created these facts. At this point, I want to query the facts. I want to figure out, for this particular conference, what is the name? Because I'm going to be showing that on the user interface. So let's write that query. So I'm going to say names is equal to await j.query. So what am I going to start with? Factual conf. That's the conference I want to know the name to. So what's the specification? And that is the, yeah, then I could send in a cancellation token if I want to, but I'll just take the default for that. So the specification is going to be given a conference match conference facts arrow, and now I get to write some link. So given the conference, so that is the conference, I'm going to match using this particular fact repository. So from name in facts of type conference name, what I want to do is just get those where the name is equal to, or the name dot conference is equal to conference, that guy right there. So those are only the names of this conference, not some other conference. And then I want to select name. And now you see why this takes an enumerator, because you often use this on results. So there we go. Those are the results of the conference name. So now let's go ahead and change the name. I'm going to say, you know what? I've locked myself into 2022. Things are not looking all that great. I'm going to rename it to Factual Conf 2023 and replace FC name 1. Okay. So now what that means is I'm going to create a new conference name with a new value, and its prior is going to be the first one that I created. So let's see that. So now I've got two names. FactualConf 2023 refers to the prior FactualConf 2022. They're both names of the same conference, so I can kind of visualize what's going on. If you see this little heavy border here, this is showing us that the results, the names that I get back here, is this collection of these two. What I want is only the current names, only those that do not appear at the head of a prior arrow. So this one has replaced that one, so I want to eliminate FactualConf 2022. So the way that I'll do that is I'll do another where clause here, where I don't have any of these things. So from next in facts of type conference name, where next.prior contains name. Select next. So you see what's happening there? I'm going to look for conference names where the prior array contains the one that I'm looking at here. So if I'm looking at this one here, if that's name, I'm going to look for other facts of type conference name such that prior contains that one. And here I'll find one. And so I'll say, oh, there's one there. So I am going to exclude it. I only want those where there are not any such conference names. And when I do that, then you can see the little solid border only goes around the leaf of the graph. So we've got just the current conference name. Okay. So let's suppose that I've got this application open on two different browsers, I don't know, two different tabs in the browser, and I've made this change here, but then I make a different change. So factconf name 3, where I say, you know what, I'm just going to drop the year. But I made that change with knowledge of FactConf 2022, not with knowledge of FactConf 2023. So it could be me making the same change on two different tabs. That seems kind of unlikely, but it happens. It could be using two different applications. So, mobile application, a rich client application, web application, with different caches. It could be two different people making this same change. So if I've got a model in which not just the creator, but other contributors, other people can help out with a conference, then they might have permission to change the name. So in any case, this is the situation that we've created. And so now when I run that query, I will get two different current names. So I will see that FactConf 2023 was created with the prior of 2022, and FactualConf was created with the prior of 2022. So now it's up to somebody to resolve that conflict. You can see that there's a conflict because there's more than one fact that has the solid border around it, which equates to that having more than one okay, so you can only have one expression. There we go. So yeah, names has two things in it. In fact, I can just go ahead and show you those objects. There they are. So I've got two names with these two different values, but they're both referring to the same conference. Pretty hard to read like that, and so we show it like that. Those are those two objects. Okay, so the fact that the count has the count of the array is greater than 1, we know that we've got a concurrent edit, and we can resolve that conflict by somebody stepping in and making the choice. So they're going to say, I'm going to create a new conference name for factual conf. And we are going to go with the name with no no year attached to it. Okay, and so this is going to replace FC name 2 and 3 because those are the two that are in conflict here. So I've run this query, I've gotten back those two results. In fact, let me go ahead and show you the way that you would normally do this kind of thing is like so. So you have made the decision, and there it is. So that's an immutable list, which should be, oh, okay. There we go. That's the way that you would usually do it. You turn that into an array. You can catch up. I believe in you. And so let's run this query again. I'm going to run this query again by giving this specification a name. Names of conference. Okay, and that way I can run that query a second time, and I can see the results. So now, for that particular conference, with that identifier of factual conf, I've created 4 different versions of the name. These two were created with prior knowledge of that first one, but not with with prior knowledge of each other. And this one was created with prior knowledge of both of those as a way to resolve that conflict. And so it brings it back down to where I only have one fact that has the solid border around it, only one element of this array. And so I know that that's the name of the conference. And so that's the kind of code that you would end up writing. Yeah, this we can indent. We can simplify things a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that. I can take this this clause right here, and I can make that a property of conference name. That way I can just refer to that property. So let's do that. So way up here in conference name, I can have a body to my record, and I can define a condition. So that is current. And so I'm going to define that condition using a lambda expression. So this is going to be, what's the technical term for it? An expression bodied condition, or an expression bodied property. Anyway, something like that. So basically it defines a getter for this property, no setter, and the getter is this code that I'm about to write here. So that's going to be new condition given an expression of type fact repository to Boolean. So here's facts. That's my fact repository. And that has a body. And so here I have defined the isCurrent property. Now, we don't have this name anymore. That's not in scope. That used to be. There we go. That used to be coming from the closure, but I don't have that anymore. Now what I'm really talking about is, does that other conference names prior contain this? And that turns that into a condition. That's valid. You should like that. All right. I just hit the run keystroke again so that it runs that. So yeah, now I've got isCurrent, this condition. And I can't remember if I ever got this working. What I want to be able to do is this. So can't convert condition because it's not a delegate type. Yeah, so I have to say that. Okay, so now that I've got my current condition on the conference name fact, then I can use it here. So, so I have this whole the not is included within the condition, so it's current if there are not any conference names that supersede this one. So I just want to say where name is current. So run that. Inaccessible due to protection level. Oh yes, silly me. That's a public property. And then, oh, I need to actually run this again. Okay, and now I can run this. And there we go. So, getting the same results as we did before. But now, we have a nice little name for that condition. Which seems helpful. Going one step further, I think that it would be possible, although I haven't really tried in earnest yet, to use some generative coding techniques. Use generics, type inference, all those fun tools, in order to declaratively say that a conference has a name that's a string, and then have it generate this conference name fact with that condition, and then also generate this where clause. I think that's possible, but I'm still not entirely sure how that would look. But that could simplify things as you're thinking about things. You say, okay, I know that a conference has a name. You just write that declaration down and you move on. You don't have to remember the mutable property pattern. It would also help you right here. So you would be able to take a query and say, okay, that's the current value, and now I want to set that value and have it generate this call to j.fact. So set the value to this using whatever you got back as the current value. So all of that stuff, one level of abstraction away, but it's important that it still follows all of the all of the rules here. It can't be a level of abstraction that introduces some crazy new thing. It's got to be following exactly these rules. So we have defined the name of our conference. We've created our conference. Then we can open the call for speakers, and now a speaker. So next thing we could do is open the call for speakers, which would allow a speaker to look for conferences that have calls for speakers. That's going to introduce something interesting. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. Let's add some more code here. So I want to have a fact type. Oh, this is an attribute. So this is going to be a factual organizer. Let's see. Well, I already did the call for speakers, right? Yeah. So the fact type is already there. Now I actually want to open that call for speakers. So I'm going to say. Actually, I don't need to capture that. So I'll just say j.fact. I'm going to have a new call for speakers. And that call for speakers is going to be for a particular conference. That's going to be factual conf. And the date time opened shall be date time now. Okay, so open that now. And then as a speaker, I want to be able to just see all of the conferences that have an open call for speakers, which brings up an interesting little challenge. Where do I start that query? I'm looking for conferences, but these conferences don't have a common predecessor. There's no one place that I can go to see all of the conferences that have been created on this site. And that is something that comes up a lot in a historical model, is the fact that we typically will write an application such that everything in this database already has a common concept to it. It already belongs to a common container. So I can go up to speaker data or session call or speaker rate, paper call, all those conference sites, and I can just search for conferences on those sites. And so they know that they are a collection of conferences. But if you have a historical model, then what you're doing is you are separating the idea of the location, that container of conferences, that is the website, from the model itself. So the model flows free. The model represents the relationships among different facts, no matter where they are. So it is location independent. So that has the advantage of being able to have multiple actors participate within the same model, and none of them gets to be the container. None of them gets to say, this is the entire list of conferences. You don't have a single source of truth. That's an advantage because now others can come along, participate, and collaborate very easily without having a topological bottleneck of that single source of truth. But disadvantage, it makes it difficult to write these kinds of queries. So in order to write these kinds of queries, what you'll often do is then introduce the idea of a tenant. So here I can say that the tenant is actually a website. So this is going to be my Festify. We'll just call it Festify site. It's not the organizer that sets up this site. I'll just put it at the top level of Festify. And so this is the Festify website. I'll give it an identifier. And so this conference is within the scope of a particular site. Okay. Now I've just changed my model here. I should be setting off some red flags, but we probably won't be able to get back to that today. But hold that thought. That's a good thought. So here's the site. So now I'll go ahead and run that, and we can see here's the Festify site connected to the conference. So now down here I can't do this anymore because I need to have a website for the conference. So here's going to be Festify, which is the website. So what's that website look like? Var Festify equal await j.fact new site festify.com. Okay, now run that, and that's what I get. So I've got my Festify conference with the website festify.com created by this user. Okay, so everything else still kind of falls together, but now that means I've got a place to start. I'm only looking for conferences on festify.com. There could be other tenants, there could be other starting places, but that's the one that I'm interested in right here, which means that after publishing a call for speakers, then here's my open calls. I can do an await j.query starting at festify.com, given a site I want to match everything with this particular shape. All right, so from I'm looking specifically for calls for speaker. Or call for speakers. So I'm looking for those. So that's going to be in facts of type call for speakers. Okay, so I'm going to grab those. What's some of the interesting information that I need about that that call for speakers? Well, I'm going to need to know the name of the conference. So let's take a look at here. Now I know that there's a call for speakers. Let's go back up to the conference name. Although, you know what? Here I'm cheating. I'm looking for the call for speakers. What I'm really looking for is the conference. And so that's fact of type conference. And I'm looking for those conferences where there exists a call for speakers. So first of all, where the conference site is equal to this site. And then I do where any of these things from call for speakers in facts of type call for speakers, where call for speakers dot conference is equal to conference. Select call for speakers. All right, so it has to be an open call for speakers. And then I can say I'm looking for the names of that conference. So for name in facts of type conference name, where name.conference is equal to that particular open conference. And then furthermore, where name is current. Then I want to select name. Okay, so show me all of the open calls, please. There we have it. So factual conf is open. And we display that on the website and give them the opportunity to propose their talks for that conference. So that is what Janaga programming is going to look like for you. And you've got this tool in terms of visualization inside of a .NET Interactive notebook to try out your model. You can build out this model even before you get to unit testing it in order to make sure that it's going to behave the way that you want it to behave. And then grab this code, pop it into a project, write some unit tests, and start building this out. So I think that's a pretty cool tool, and I'm really looking forward to using it to build some sites. I'm also looking forward to seeing what you build with it. So reach out to me and let's see what we can build together. All right, I will catch you next time.